A father never forgets the moment his child disappears. Not like a dream. Not like yesterday's weather. He forgets everything else. Birthdays, anniversaries, the sound of his own voice, but he never forgets that moment. 18 years. That's how long Miguel Martinez forgot to live. December 14, 2001. 3:47 p.m. Austin, Texas. 12-year-old Ruby Martinez walks out of Lincoln Middle School. She's wearing a red jacket. Her backpack is slung over one shoulder. She walks with a barely noticeable limp, a distinctive gait from a childhood injury. No one knows this detail matters yet. She never arrives home. By 6 p.m., her mother Carmen is calling hospitals. By 8 p.m., police are searching. By midnight, volunteers are walking through neighborhoods screaming a dead girl's name into the darkness. Except Ruby isn't dead yet. She's lost. Somewhere in the sprawl of Austin, a 12-year-old girl with a red jacket and a distinctive limp has evaporated. The case goes nowhere. No witnesses. No leads. No truth. For 18 years, the Martinez family lives as ghosts. They age. They break. They exist, but they do not live. But here's what they don't know. Ruby is alive. She's becoming someone else. She's going to survive something unspeakable. And one autumn afternoon, in a crowded university gymnasium, in front of hundreds of witnesses, her father will see his daughter again for the first time in 18 years. And he will recognize her by the way she walks. This is the story of how a ghost became real. Of what 18 years of darkness can do to a child. Of a woman who survived the unsurvivable. And of a father who never stopped looking. But before we find her, we need to understand what was lost. If you're watching this right now, I need to know. Where are you in the world? Drop your country in the comments. Let me know you're here. Because this story, this impossible, heartbreaking story, belongs to everyone who's ever wondered, what happens to the lost? Subscribe. Because some cold cases defy belief. Ruby Martinez was not a statistic. She was not a case number. She was not a face on a missing persons flyer gathering dust in a police filing cabinet. She was a girl. A specific, real, deeply loved human being. Born in 1989 to Miguel and Carmen Martinez, Ruby was the middle child of three. Her father worked at an automotive parts factory, steady work, honest work, the kind that kept a family stable. Her mother worked part-time at a grocery store and spent the rest of her time making sure Ruby, her older brother and younger sister had everything they needed. By December 2001, Ruby was in 6th grade at Lincoln Middle School. 12 years old. That in-between age where childhood still clings to you, but adolescence is already reaching. She was bright, not brilliant but curious. She had a B+ average in most classes and loved mathematics with genuine enthusiasm. She could spend hours on homework problems, chewing on her pencil, working through equations with focus that surprised her teachers. She was so happy that week. She had gotten an A on a math test and she was so proud. Her mother Carmen would remember this detail for the next 2 decades. Her best friend was a girl named Sophia. They'd been inseparable since 4th grade, the kind of friendship where you know each other's vulnerabilities, each other's dreams. They sat together at lunch. They passed notes in study hall. They were planning to go to high school together, convinced their friendship would last forever, the way 12-year-olds do. Ruby had dreams. Real ones. She wanted to be a nurse. Not because she was pressured, but because she'd seen how nurses treated people with kindness. She wanted that skill. That purpose. She'd drawn sketches in her notebook, little stick figures labeled with medical terms she'd learned from watching television documentaries. Her mother found these drawings later, saved them, grieved the future they represented. She didn't like bullies. She was the kind of girl who stood up for people smaller than her, quieter than her. She had a quiet courage about her. And then there was the limp. A childhood leg injury had left her with a distinctive walking gait. Not severe enough to slow her down. Barely noticeable unless you knew to look. But visible. Recognizable. The kind of physical marker that a father, watching his daughter from far away, would remember forever. In December 2001, Ruby Martinez was a girl living an ordinary life in an ordinary Texas suburb. She did homework at the kitchen table. She fought with her siblings about the television. She made her mother laugh. She made her father proud by bringing home that A on the math test. She had no idea that ordinary was about to vanish. She had no idea that she would disappear. And she had absolutely no idea that 18 years later she would walk across a stage and be found again. Not because someone looked, but because her father recognized the way she walked. December 14, 2001. Friday. A normal day in Austin with clear skies and temperatures in the mid-50s. 7:15 a.m. Ruby wakes up. Her alarm clock reads 7:15. She gets out of bed reluctantly, all 12-year-olds hate mornings, and makes her way to the kitchen. Her mother is already there making breakfast. Cereal, toast, orange juice. Normal breakfast food. They talk about nothing important. Ruby argues with her brother about the TV. Someone turned on cartoons too early. This irritates everyone. It's the kind of argument that happens in 10,000 households on 10,000 mornings. By 8:30 a.m., Ruby is at the bus stop. She's wearing her red jacket. It's December, the jacket is necessary. But years later, her mother will remember that jacket in excruciating detail. Red. Her daughter was wearing red. 8:45 a.m. The bus arrives. 12 students board. One of them is Ruby Martinez. The bus driver sees her. 2 other students sit near her. They remember her. She's there. She's real. She exists. 9 a.m. She arrives at Lincoln Middle School. She walks through the doors. She walks through hallways filled with 100 other 6th graders, all of them moving toward their first class. Ruby moves with them. She's one of the crowd. The morning passes in the way school mornings do. Math class, she's attentive. The teacher remembers her being present. Lunch, she sits with Sophia. Nothing unusual. They talk about weekend plans. Ruby mentions wanting to see a movie. Sophia agrees. They make plans. Sophia will give a statement to police years later. She seemed happy. Normal. Like any other day. Afternoon social studies. Ruby is present. The teacher takes attendance. Her name is marked down. She was here. She existed. 2:50 p.m. The final bell rings. The school day ends. Students begin the ritual of gathering their things, moving toward exits, heading toward buses. Ruby packs her backpack. She's not in any rush. She has time. There's no indication that time is about to become her enemy. 3:15 p.m. Ruby leaves the school building through the east exit. Security camera footage captures this moment. A girl in a red jacket moving toward the bus stop. Her distinctive limp is visible in the footage. Years later, detectives will watch this video frame by frame, studying her gait, memorizing the way her body moves. 3:47 p.m. This is the moment time stops. This is the moment everything changes. The bus that normally runs the route from Lincoln Middle School to the South Austin neighborhoods doesn't arrive. The driver calls in with a mechanical failure. The bus is pulled off the route. It doesn't show up. Ruby waits. She doesn't know the bus won't come. She waits at the bus stop for 30 minutes. Maybe 40. Other students move on, catch rides with friends, with parents who pick them up early, call home for alternative transportation. But Ruby waits. Maybe she's tired. Maybe she's distracted. Maybe she's thinking about that movie she and Sophia discussed. By 4:30 p.m. she hasn't boarded an alternate bus. No one sees her after this time. No camera captures her. No witness reports her. She is no longer visible to the world. 5:45 p.m. Carmen Martinez calls the school. Is Ruby there? Did she miss the bus? No. Ruby left school on time. 6 p.m. Police receive the missing persons report. At this moment, 18 years of darkness begins. 5:45 p.m. Carmen's first call to the school. Her voice is calm. A mother's logical question. Surely there's an explanation. Surely Ruby missed the bus and is at Sophia's house. Surely this is nothing. Sophia's mother answers the second call. Is Ruby with you? No. Ruby never showed up. That's when logic collapses. That's when a mother's mind stops working in straight lines. That's when possibility splinters into 1,000 terrifying directions. Miguel is at work. He gets the call from Carmen. His wife's voice carries something he's never heard before. A tremor. A crack. A fracture in certainty. Ruby hasn't come home. He leaves work immediately. He drives recklessly, running red lights, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. The drive feels like it takes hours. It probably takes 20 minutes. By the time he arrives home, Carmen is in the kitchen, holding the phone, her address book open in front of her. She's making a list of numbers to call. Friends, relatives, anyone, everyone. 6:30 p.m. They call the Austin Police Department. They wait on hold. They give the information. Their 12-year-old daughter. Last seen leaving school at 3:15 p.m. Red jacket. Distinctive limp. The dispatcher is professional. She's heard this before. Wait 24 hours, she says, repeating the old protocol. Children come home. But Miguel and Carmen can't wait. They can't sit in their house and wait. The waiting is worse than anything else. The waiting is where fear takes root. They drive the neighborhood themselves. They call her name. They drive slowly through streets looking for a red jacket, looking for a girl, looking for their daughter. Streets they've driven 100 times suddenly feel alien, threatening. Every shadow could be hiding something. Every empty lot could contain a truth they're not ready to face. By 7:30 p.m. they've called every friend they can think of. By 8 p.m. the police are taking it seriously. An officer comes to the house. He looks at Ruby's photograph. He listens to Carmen describe her clothing, her distinctive walk, her dreams of becoming a nurse. He's writing things down, his pen moving across a pad, and Carmen thinks, this is real now. If he's writing it down, it's real. By 10 p.m., neighbors are joining the search. They're walking through residential streets with flashlights. They're calling a girl's name into the darkness, a name they don't even know yet will become the soundtrack to their nightmares. Miguel has made 200 phone calls by midnight. His voice is hoarse. His hands are shaking. He sits at the kitchen table and he realizes, his daughter is not coming home tonight. She is not walking through that door. She is not safe. Carmen sits at the same table. Ruby's unfinished homework is in front of her. A worksheet about fractions, her pencil marks showing work in progress. This small detail, the incomplete homework, somehow proves that Ruby was going to come home. She had homework to finish. She had a life that was going to continue. But it hasn't. Life has stopped. Life has fractured. By 11 p.m. there are police cars outside the house. There are neighbors walking through the neighborhood with dogs. There is an apparatus of search and investigation grinding forward. And in the Martinez house time stops. In the space between 5:45 p.m., when Carmen made that first call, and midnight, 18 years worth of grief is born. A father loses his daughter. A mother loses her child. A family loses the only future they'd ever imagined. The night is endless. It stretches across decades. By dawn on December 15, 2001, Ruby Martinez's face was everywhere. Local news stations broke the story. Missing, 12-year-old girl Austin. Photographs of Ruby, school pictures, family snapshots, appeared on television screens across the city. The same face, the same girl, the same red jacket repeated over and over. The Austin Police Department escalated the investigation. Missing children cases move faster than missing adults. The department knew this. They knew that the first 48 hours are critical. They knew that every moment matters. Search volunteers numbered in the hundreds by Saturday morning. Volunteers who'd never met Ruby Martinez, who had no connection to her family, who simply understood that a child was missing and that this was bigger than individual lives. They came with flashlights. They came with dogs. They came with the collective will of a community that suddenly understood. This could be anyone's child. The search was massive. Austin is 3,500 square miles of sprawl. Where do you even begin? Volunteers combed through ravines, through forests, through abandoned buildings. They checked storm drains. They walked through fields calling a child's name. News crews camped outside the Martinez house. Reporters asked Miguel and Carmen the same question repeatedly. How does it feel? As if feeling could be articulated. As if grief could be soundbite ready. Flyers appeared on every telephone pole, every store window, every bulletin board in the city. Ruby's face, smiling, innocent, forever 12, became inescapable. You couldn't buy milk without seeing her. You couldn't fill up your gas tank without seeing her. You couldn't move through Austin without confronting the reality of her absence. Parents hugged their children tighter. Schools started implementing pickup protocols. The assumption of safety, that children could walk home from school, that neighborhoods were benign, evaporated. The community split into two camps. Those who believed Ruby had been abducted by a stranger, some unknown predator passing through Austin, and those who whispered darker theories. Someone local. Someone they knew. Someone from the neighborhood. Rumors spread like wildfire through residential areas. A van spotted near schools. A man asking directions to a specific address. Suspicious activity near the park. Each rumor was reported to police. Each rumor was investigated and dismissed. Christmas was coming. The Martinez house was supposed to be filled with decorations, with the anticipation of holiday joy. Instead, it was filled with detectives and volunteers and the machinery of crisis. Other families experienced that Christmas differently. They hugged their kids. They gave thanks that their daughters had come home. Some families looked at their children and thought, that could have been us. The thought took root. The fear took root. Schools held assemblies about stranger danger. Parents drove their children to the bus stop instead of letting them walk. Neighborhoods that had felt safe now felt vulnerable. A single missing girl had transformed the city's sense of security into something fragile and temporary. By the end of December, the media had moved on to other stories. The news cycle is relentless. Reporters stop caring. Cameras stop rolling. The volunteer search teams begin to dwindle. By January 2002, Ruby's face was still on flyers, but fewer people were looking. The initial fervor had faded. The community's attention had shifted to other crises, other tragedies, other lives. And Ruby's disappearance became a cold case. Detective Sarah Chen was assigned to the Ruby Martinez case on Day 3, December 17, 2001. A 15-year veteran of the Austin Police Department, Chen had worked missing children cases before. But none like this. None that would haunt her for the next 2 decades. The investigation moved in standard patterns. Canvassed the neighborhood. Did anyone see anything unusual? Did anyone see a vehicle? Did anyone see a stranger? The answers came back inconclusive. A woman reported seeing a man in a dark car near the school that afternoon. But the description was vague. White? Hispanic? The car color? Gray? Black? The witnesses couldn't agree. Police brought in a sketch artist. The resulting composite looked like 10,000 men in Austin. It was useless. Interview all school staff, cleared. Talk to Sophia. Nothing unusual. Ruby seemed happy. Contact the bus company. Mechanical failure confirmed. The driver cleared. Interview the driver 3 times looking for inconsistencies. There were none. A tip came in. Ruby had been seen at a truck stop off I-35, 30 miles outside the city. Officers rushed there in the middle of the night, convinced this was the breakthrough. They found a girl matching the description. Wrong girl. Different child. The disappointment was crushing. Another tip. She was spotted in San Antonio 2 hours south. The team drove there. Checked every shelter, every bus station, every place a child might hide. Nothing. No Ruby. Detective Chen pulled security footage from nearby businesses, grainy, inconclusive, showing movement but revealing nothing. She reviewed school records obsessively, looking for a pattern, a threat, a warning sign. There was none. Ruby was a normal student. No predatory teachers. No warning indicators. She interviewed the bus driver again. And again. And again. Looking for a crack in his story. There wasn't one. He was genuinely devastated that he'd called in sick that day. Mechanical failure on the bus meant the route was canceled. And somewhere in those 47 minutes, Ruby disappeared. By week 2, Chen had a murder board covered in photographs, timelines, and question marks. Hundreds of question marks. The case splintered into 1,000 fragments. Each lead evaporated like morning dew. A psychic claimed Ruby was buried near Zilker Park. Chen organized a search. They dug in the cold December soil. Nothing. Another prisoner claimed to have information. Chen drove to the prison, convinced this was the moment. The prisoner wanted attention. He had nothing. Weeks became months. The initial frenzy subsided. Detectives returned to other cases. The police department moved on. But Chen couldn't let it go. She kept Ruby's file on her desk. She drove past the school late at night, trying to visualize that afternoon, trying to understand what happened in 47 minutes. She interviewed everyone again. Some people started avoiding her calls. They understood that this case was going nowhere. By 2003, the case was officially cold. No arrests. No suspects. No progress. But Detective Chen was just beginning her obsession. She used her personal time to run new tips through the system. She drove to crime scenes at midnight, sitting in her car, thinking. She attended crime conferences specifically to discuss missing children cases. She networked with detectives from other cities asking, "Have you seen anything like this? Do you have a theory?" No one had answers. The case became personal in a way that violated protocol. Chen's superiors gently suggested she move on. "You can't save them all, Sarah." But she heard it as, "You failed this one." And failing Ruby meant failing her family. It meant accepting that a child had disappeared and no one would ever know why. She couldn't accept that. So she carried Ruby's file everywhere. To the coffee shop. To her home office. To bars where she sat alone, drinking whiskey, staring at crime scene photographs. For 10 years, Detective Sarah Chen existed in a state of obsession. By 2008, Detective Sarah Chen's marriage was fracturing. Her husband would find her at 2 a.m., sitting at the kitchen table with crime scene photos spread across the surface. Murder board photographs. Witness statements. Interview transcripts. All of it organized in a pattern only she understood. "You can't save them all," he'd say, repeating what her superiors had said. She never responded. There was no response. She wasn't trying to save all of them. She was trying to save one. Her marriage collapsed under the weight of her obsession. By 2010 they were separated. By 2012 they were divorced. Her ex-husband would later be interviewed about her dedication. It consumed her. She wasn't present in our life because her mind was always with that girl. Chin was promoted to sergeant in 2007. She was given supervisory responsibilities. But she couldn't let the case go. She'd spend her administrative time reviewing Ruby's file. She'd spend her off hours making phone calls to cold case databases, to university research programs, to anyone who might have developed new forensic technology. By 2012, she'd become known among her colleagues as the Ruby Detective. It wasn't a compliment. People pitied her. They saw her as stuck, unable to move forward, unable to accept the limits of investigation. Her superiors transferred her to different divisions, hoping a change of scenery would help her let go. It didn't. Wherever she was, whatever case she was assigned, Ruby Martinez was always present. Ruby was always in the back of her mind. She used her own money to run DNA tests. She hired a private investigator to revisit old leads. She spent weekends driving to locations where tips had placed Ruby, always hoping that this time the pattern would resolve, the mystery would crack open. In 2014, a therapist told her, "You're using this case as a way to process your own powerlessness." She never went back. In 2015, she was offered early retirement. She was 52 years old. She accepted, thinking that maybe without the badge she could finally let it go. She couldn't. Her home office became a shrine to Ruby Martinez. One entire wall was dedicated to the case. Timeline on one board. Suspects on another. Theories on another. Photographs everywhere. Every surface covered. She'd sit in that room for hours, reading the same statements, studying the same photographs, waiting for something to click, waiting for the pattern to reveal itself. Her sister stopped visiting. Her friends had long since drifted away. She was alone with Ruby's ghost, alone with a child she'd never met, whose case she carried like a stone in her chest. By 2017, Chen had been obsessed with this case for 16 years. She was 54 years old. She'd given her entire career to solving it. She'd sacrificed her marriage. She'd sacrificed her relationships. She'd sacrificed the possibility of moving on. And still Ruby remained missing. She'd failed. Despite everything, she'd failed the girl. That was the thought that consumed her. The Martinez family lived in a state of perpetual limbo. Ruby's bedroom remained unchanged. Her books still on the shelf. Her homework desk still organized. Her posters on the wall. The room became a shrine, a preserved moment frozen at the exact second she disappeared. Carmen couldn't bring herself to pack it away. To do so would be to admit Ruby wasn't coming back. But not packing it away meant maintaining false hope. This ambiguity became their prison. Miguel threw himself into work. He moved through days in mechanical routine, waking at 5 a.m., working until 6 p.m., coming home to a house that felt empty. He didn't talk about Ruby. He couldn't. Every time he tried, his voice broke. So he learned silence instead. Carmen joined missing persons support groups. She met other mothers, other families trapped in the same suspended nightmare. They'd sit in church basements, drinking terrible coffee, exchanging theories about their missing children. Had they been trafficked? Sold into slavery? Or had they suffered something quicker, more merciful, and then been discarded? The theories turned dark because the darkness was better than the void. Darkness could be investigated. The void could not. Every December 14th, the family held a vigil. Candles, flowers, prayers. Year after year, the same ritual. Ruby would have been 13. Then 15. Then 18. Then 21. Then 25. Then 30. Ruby was aging in their imaginations. What did she look like now? Was she alive? Was she suffering? The unanswered questions metastasized into psychological wounds. Other family members distanced themselves. The pain was too heavy. The grief too specific. Ruby's younger sibling grew up in a house of ghosts. They learned early that they could never fill the void, never replace the missing sister. They carried that knowledge quietly, the knowledge that their existence was insufficient. Their love couldn't bring her back. In 2010, Miguel suffered a heart attack. The doctors said stress was a factor. The family knew it was Ruby. The case was killing him slowly. Carmen attempted suicide twice. Once in 2006. Once in 2012. Both times she was hospitalized. Both times she survived. Both times she returned to the house where Ruby's bedroom remained unchanged. The marriage fractured, healed, fractured again. They stayed together not from love, but from shared grief. They were bound by the missing daughter. Divorce would feel like abandonment, a final betrayal. By 2015, Miguel had aged 30 years. His hair was white. His face was lined with exhaustion. He moved through the world like a ghost himself. Carmen was taking medication for depression. She gained weight, medication side effects, stress, the simple fact of not caring about her appearance anymore. When you're living in the tomb of your missing child, vanity becomes irrelevant. Their younger son had moved to California. He couldn't bear to live in the house anymore. The memories were too heavy. He stayed in contact but visited rarely. The distance wasn't healthy, but it was necessary. By 2018, 17 years after Ruby disappeared, the Martinez family had been broken and slowly healed and broken again. They existed. They survived. But they did not live. In 2018, everything changed. The Austin Police Department began a major initiative to digitize decades of cold case files. Thousands of cases, some dating back to the 1980s, were being scanned, uploaded into integrated databases, analyzed with new software designed to find patterns. Ruby Martinez's file was scanned. Every photograph, every interview transcript, every piece of evidence. Her case was digitized and uploaded into a system that could cross-reference it with thousands of other cases, looking for connections that human investigators might have missed. Simultaneously, the police department partnered with a DNA analysis company to retest old biological evidence using modern forensic techniques. A hair sample collected at the scene in 2001, during the initial search of areas where Ruby was last seen, was retrieved from storage. The hair was retested using 21st-century DNA technology. Highly sensitive. Highly accurate. The results came back negative in the national database. No matches. But the database had expanded dramatically since 2001. In 2001, there were approximately 1.3 million DNA profiles in the national database. By 2018, there were over 20 million. More suspects. More offenders. More possibilities. The department could only wait. Wait and hope that someday, somewhere, someone connected to Ruby's case would have their DNA entered into the system. Meanwhile, Detective Chin, now officially retired, pushed to have the case featured on true crime podcasts and social media accounts focused on cold cases. She worked with the police department's public information officer to create a viral campaign. In September 2019, Ruby's case went viral on Reddit, true crime forums, social media. The image of a 12-year-old girl in a red jacket circulated across the internet. Comments poured in. Theories. Suggestions. Wild ideas from people who'd never met Ruby, who had no connection to her family, but who understood that a mystery unsolved is a wound that never heals. Most of the tips were garbage. Conspiracy theories. Psychic nonsense. But one tip was different. One tip was specific. One tip was verifiable. A woman named Patricia Gonzalez came forward. She claimed she had worked at a group home in San Antonio in the early 2000s. She'd seen a girl matching Ruby's description, with a distinctive limp, a visible walking gait that made her recognizable, living in the facility. The girl had no records. No ID. No documented identity. She'd simply appeared one day, was cared for, and then aged out of the system. The girl's name in the records was Maria Santos, a placeholder name for an unidentified minor. Patricia had become close to Maria. They talked late into the nights. Patricia had asked about her past. Maria had no memory. No recollection of her life before age 6 or 7. It was as if her existence began in that group home. When Maria turned 18, she was discharged. Patricia never knew what happened to her. But there was a detail that made Detective Chen's hands shake when she read it. Maria Santos had a distinctive limp. The same gait. The same distinctive walk. Chen pulled the file on Maria Santos. There was a photograph from 2004. A girl of approximately 8 or 9 years old. Dark curly hair. Small build. Chen placed the photograph next to Ruby Martinez's school picture. The resemblance was unmistakable. For the first time in 18 years, Detective Sarah Chen felt something shift. After nearly 2 decades of dead ends, after countless false leads, after years of obsession that had cost her everything, the case suddenly moved. Ruby Martinez might have been found. She was alive. October 2019. Detective Chin and a small task force located Maria Santos. She was now 30 years old. She lived in Austin. She'd moved back to the city years earlier, drawn to it by some invisible force, not knowing why she felt connected to the place. She worked as a healthcare aide at a local hospital. She helped patients. She cared for people. She was quiet, dedicated, competent. Her colleagues respected her. They didn't know her story. When detectives approached her, they didn't say, "We think you're a girl who disappeared 18 years ago." They said, "We'd like to talk to you." Maria was skeptical. Defensive. Why were police at her apartment? What had she done? She'd lived a quiet life. She'd broken no laws. She'd hurt no one. The detectives explained, "We think you might be someone else. Someone who went missing a long time ago." Maria thought they were insane. DNA testing was performed. Maria consented reluctantly, convinced this was some kind of mistake. The results came back. Conclusive. Definitive. Maria Santos was Ruby Martinez. The revelation created an existential crisis for the woman who'd spent her entire adult life as someone else. If you don't remember your identity, are you still that person? Maria had built an entire life. She had friendships. She had work relationships. She had an identity as Maria Santos. This woman was not Ruby Martinez. Ruby Martinez was a ghost, a name, a missing girl. For 30 years, Maria had existed as herself. Not as a victim. Not as a case. Just as Maria. Just as a woman living a quiet life. And now she was being told, "You're someone else." The DNA didn't lie. The science was irrefutable. But the truth was incomprehensible. When detectives asked about her earliest memories, Maria's face went blank. "I don't remember anything before I was maybe 6 or 7, she said. "I was at a group home. Before that, nothing. No home. No family. No name." The intake workers at the San Antonio group home had assigned her Maria Santos as a placeholder. No one knew who she was. No one investigated. She was another anonymous ward of the state, not uncommon for 2003. She lived in the group home for 12 years. She was fed. She was cared for. She was safe in the way that institutions provide safety. By age 18 she aged out. She was discharged with a small amount of money, a bus ticket, and the implicit message, "You're on your own now." She moved to Austin because the name meant something in her fractured subconscious. She didn't know why. She just followed the pull. She found work. She found stability. She built a life, not a happy life, not an unhappy life, just a life. And now she was being told, "For 18 years the world has been looking for you." The question that emerged was unspeakable. Where had she been from December 2001 to 2003? The missing girl had spent 24 months in absolute darkness. 3 years. 1,000 days. Maria had no memory. She was younger then, perhaps trauma had fractured her mind. Perhaps someone had deliberately ensured she couldn't remember. Perhaps her own psyche had constructed amnesia as a defense mechanism. The most unsettling possibility, she wasn't safe. She was a victim of something far darker than a simple abduction. Over the following weeks, as detectives worked with a trauma psychologist, fragments of memory began to surface. A house with wooden floors. A kind woman's voice. Being told her name was Maria now. Being told she had to forget. A room with bars on the windows. These fragments were consistent with either kidnapping or severe abuse. Or both. The psychologist's conclusion. Maria had experienced severe trauma resulting in selective amnesia. The mind's defense mechanism against unbearable pain. But the specific details of those 3 years remained locked away, buried in a part of Maria's consciousness that refused to surface. And they might never surface. With Maria identified as Ruby Martinez, the investigation pivoted toward a critical question. Who brought her to the San Antonio group home in 2003? The intake coordinator from 2003 was tracked down. She was retired now, living in a quiet suburb outside San Antonio. She remembered vaguely. A woman had dropped the girl off. The woman claimed to have found her wandering. No formal paperwork. No custody documentation. The woman never came back. It was unusual. It was suspicious. And it was the only lead. The group home's security footage from 2003 was pulled, and miraculously, it still existed in archived storage. The footage was degraded, filmed in black and white, but visible. It showed a woman in her 50s, leading a small child into the building. The child was approximately 6 or 7 years old. She had a distinctive limp. She moved slowly, carefully, as if her body carried pain. The woman was never identified. A reconstruction image was created from the footage using forensic video enhancement. The woman's face was photographed, aged forward, distributed to social services agencies across Texas. Missing children advocates circulated the image on social media. And then, a match. A retired social worker recognized the woman. Helen Vasquez. A woman in her 50s who had worked as a home healthcare aide throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. She'd had access to homes. She'd had access to vulnerable populations, the elderly, the disabled, the at-risk. And she'd had access to children. Helen Vasquez's employment records showed that she had worked in the Austin area during 2001 and 2002, the exact period when Ruby disappeared. She lived on a street 4 blocks from the Martinez home. The pieces were assembling. But there was one problem. Helen Vasquez was dead. She died in 2015, 4 years before Ruby was found. She was beyond interrogation. She was beyond justice. Detectives interviewed Vasquez's family, her children, her siblings. They asked, "Did your mother ever mention a missing child? Did she ever seem guilty? Did she ever display unexplained emotional distress?" The family was cooperative but ultimately unhelpful. They remembered Helen as a kind woman, a hard worker. They had no knowledge of any involvement with a missing child. Her financial records were examined. Were there payments from someone? Did someone compensate her for keeping quiet? The records showed nothing suspicious. Her property was examined. Was there a location where Ruby had been kept? Nothing was found. No evidence. No trace. The investigation hit a wall. Helen Vasquez was dead. Without a confession, without physical evidence, without witnesses willing to testify, there was no way to prove what she'd done. But the pattern was clear. Helen Vasquez had likely taken Ruby Martinez. She'd kept her for approximately 18 months to 2 years. And then, for reasons unknown, she'd brought her to the San Antonio group home and disappeared from the girl's life. What? That question might never be answered. Detectives worked with a forensic psychologist to understand Helen Vasquez's potential motivations. Some possibilities emerged. She'd become attached to the girl. She'd wanted a child of her own. She'd been traumatized by guilt. She'd feared capture. She'd wanted Ruby to have a better life than the one she was providing. All of these were speculative. All were theories without proof. The investigation of Helen Vasquez focused on building a timeline. In December 2001, a girl disappeared from a school bus stop. In January 2002, Helen Vasquez's work schedule changed. She stopped taking assignments in Austin and moved her work exclusively to San Antonio. By 2003, she'd brought a girl with no identity to a group home. The timeline was suggestive. But suggestion wasn't proof. Detective Chin, now 65 years old and consulting on the case, felt the frustration of 17 years condense into a single moment. She'd finally found Ruby. But the person responsible for her abduction would never face justice. Helen Vasquez had died with her secrets. The case would remain partially unsolved. By 2021, Maria/Ruby made a conscious decision. With her identity restored, though fragmented, though incomplete, she chose to reclaim her original name. She began using Ruby. She became Ruby Martinez again. But more than reclaiming her name, she wanted to reclaim her life. She wanted to fulfill what the 12-year-old Ruby Martinez had dreamed of doing. She enrolled in community college. She studied nursing. She worked full-time as a healthcare aide while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. She attended classes at night. She studied during lunch breaks. She carved out time on weekends. She was determined. Her college classmates didn't know her history. They knew her as a quiet, dedicated woman. Intelligent. Compassionate. Someone who clearly cared about healthcare. Someone who wanted to help people. They had no idea that she was completing a life interrupted 18 years earlier. By 2020, she transferred to the University of Texas at Austin, one of the state's most prestigious universities. She was now studying for her Bachelor of Science in Nursing, the exact career the young girl had dreamed of. She was a 31-year-old woman in a classroom with 20-year-olds. But she belonged there. She'd earned her place. In May 2021, Ruby Martinez graduated from UT Austin with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Her family was invited to the commencement ceremony. Miguel and Carmen walked into the UT Austin gymnasium. They were nervous. They hadn't seen their daughter since she was 12 years old. She was now 30. She was a stranger and their daughter simultaneously. The graduates were lined up, prepared to cross the stage. The ceremony began. Names were called. Students walked across the stage. The crowd applauded. And then, Martinez Ruby. She walked across the stage. She was wearing her cap and gown. Her face was calm. She was moving slowly.